and run a code, so if you had a cardiac
By the
arrest.
way, make sure to be recording this, guys, because I want this. Go ahead.
So that if someone arrested, I would be the nurse in charge, so I had
If someone passed away.
Oh yes, if
Yeah.
someone's heart stopped,
Okay.
that I would know how to respond with both the machinery and the drugs and everything. So Kathryn Kuhlman had been admitted to the CCU unit in Hillcrest Hospital.
Now, she had an enlarged heart from what we had been told.
She had had valve surgery several months earlier in a nearby hospital and had some complications and wasn't recovering the way
I remember that
we
because
hoped.
we had heard that. But, okay, go ahead, please.
So she was already admitted into the hospital when I met her. The other nurses got to know her during the week that I was off taking my course to learn how to become an intensive care nurse. I never spoke to her alive. The night I came on was my first ever night as a charge nurse. I was nervous, and there were only 2 patients in coronary care. Normally you'd have 6. So I was myself and 1 nurse's aide. And
So it was Miss Kuhlman and some other lady in the
Yes.
in the other room.
And the other lady was fairly stable. Ms. Kuhlman was not. She had cardiac arrested on day shift. They had done a code, they had revived her, she was on a respirator, non-responsive. So even when you pinpricked her fingers, she wouldn't pull away. When you tried to get a response out of her, there was no response. She was not triggering the respirator at all. It was breathing for her. Her heart was beating. Her kidneys were failing. She was very sweaty. When I checked her over, I tried to find a pulse on her wrist, and I couldn't feel one. Considering how frail and small she was.
People don't realize how frail she was even before she passed. You could have taken your hands, put them around her waist, and your fingers would have touched. She was that thin.
Oh, I lifted her up in bed myself when I was trying to get her repositioned.
What did she, I mean, she was quite frail when I saw her last time. Probably she was way more when you saw her.
Well, she weighed I would say less than 80 pounds. She was tiny. When I listened to her heart and her lungs at the beginning of the shift, I was concerned about her. The respirator was doing all the work, but her lungs were still having some problems with fluid. Her cardiac monitor was stable at that time. She was in a normal sinus rhythm, which you would hope for. And Margie and I repositioned her, rubbed her, suctioned her.
That's the other nurse.
That's my nurse's aide.
Okay.
So we did everything you would do for somebody in intensive care. This is something you would do every 2 hours. So we got her settled in for the first 2 hours. Then I went and checked the other lady. And then I went to the nurse's desk to write up my notes. And then Margie and she was sort of teaching me the routine of night shift. We were playing a little game. And I remember looking up at the monitor just as she went from a normal sinus rhythm to a straight line. Well, I just had my course, and you don't do that. You might go into 10 different rhythms in between good and dead, but you don't go perfect dead. So my feeling was that she had sweated off a lead because she was quite sweaty. So if you don't have all 3 leads on, you can get a straight line, and it's not the person, it's the machinery. So I thought it was the machinery. I stood up to walk into her room, which was not as far away as the keyboard, and I took 2 steps towards her room. I hit the button to record, and I actually did manage to record the normal rhythm to the straight line. And as I stepped towards her room, we lost all the power. And
In the hospital.
at that time, I only knew it was in CCU. It was in the full 800-bed hospital in Tulsa.
That is amazing, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. Go ahead.
So I walked into her room in the dark, and I remember thinking, 15 seconds should go by, the emergency generator will kick in, I I have to make sure her respirator is plugged into a red plug, because this was 76 and not every plug was connected to the backup generator. So I'm in there in the dark. I can feel that all 3 tabs were still on. And I thought, wow, maybe this wasn't a mechanical problem. Why did I get the straight line? So Margie came in with a stethoscope and a flashlight, and I'm listening to her chest, and the lights flashed on and immediately back off again. Well, that's not supposed to happen. I just had my course. And I was starting to get really nervous. I remember thinking, when I listened to her chest and I heard no heartbeat, and I knew I wouldn't hear breath sounds because the respirator wasn't going, I thought it's a good thing she's a no code. Because if she was a code, I should have called it by now and I should have started CPR. But because the doctor had written no code, if she dies, let her go, that's where we were. So I went to the phone and I picked it up and I called the supervisor. And I said, Kathryn Kuhlman has passed away. And she said, are you in darkness? And I said, yes, we are. And she said, I'm over on like 3 East. So she had to go down 3 flights of stairs, go under a 4-lane road, and come back up to get to the part of the building that I was in. So she said, it'll take me a few minutes to get there. So I hung up the phone and went back in the room. And I was not entirely convinced that she was dead, because I really haven't seen many dead people at that point in my career. And I was checking her again. I remember I said, Margie, what do you think? You've seen a lot more dead people than I have. And she said, well, now, Joyce, use the nurse. You have to make these decisions. Oh, okay. So while I was listening and feeling and touching her,
Now listen to this.
the absolute warmest, thickest, most overwhelming smell of roses absolutely flooded the room. It was so hot and so thick, I had trouble staying in the room and breathing.
You nurses couldn't breathe in there.
We had to step back just this far back so that we were in the main part in order to breathe. The supervisor arrives. By this time, the lights were back on, respirators going. It didn't matter. She was passed, even I could tell that. And she said, oh, this is where the smell is coming from. I could smell it on 3 East, and as I came through the tunnel,
Wait, the lady could smell it?
in the part of the building that was on the other side of the 4-lane road. And as she came through the tunnel, the smell, the aroma got stronger and stronger. And when she came into CCU, she said, this is where that smell is coming from. And I pointed to Kathryn's room and I said, that is where the smell is coming from. And she said, well, you guys aren't allowed to have roses in here. Everybody who smelled it called it roses. No one said flowers. It was so roses. And I said, we don't have any flowers in here. And she said, okay. So she goes in and she is checking her heart and her breath sounds, and she says, and she pronounced her dead, which in Oklahoma, a supervisor is allowed to do if the person is in
And
Oklahoma.
that was 1 a.m., something like that, she said.
So she says to me, what was the time of death? Dang, that was the one thing I did learn in my course. I should have looked at my watch, and I didn't want to let on. So I did a little quick sneak peek, and it was, I don't remember anymore, but it was like 1:10 or 1:15, so I picked AM. So I picked the minute in the middle. I said 1:13, so she records time of death.
So you'd been there for 2 hours,
Yes,
just about when God took her home.
yes.
You told me last night that the other nurses told you that she predicted when she would die.
When day shift came on in the morning, do you want me to tell the Tink Wilkerson part in the
No.
middle? When day shift came on in the morning, they said, where's Kathryn Kuhlman? And I said, well, she passed away last night. Well, they were so excited. They had gotten to know her. They loved her. They had taken her as their own. And they ran to the chart, and they started flipping back through the pages. And here, they said she predicted the date and time of her death. Well, not only was the February 20th right, the 113 was there.
Wow.
Can you believe that? And she told the nurses prior
Yes,
that she would go at 1:13 a.m. on the 20th.
exactly. And they had written it in the notes. And I was a little perturbed. I said, well, that should have been on the Paradox. I would have been watching her more closely instead of playing the game. And they said, well, I said, did she make any other predictions? And they said, yes. The only flower she wants at her funeral is roses. And I hadn't told them about the smell. I slumped into a chair, fought off tears, and I said, I can't handle this. I don't understand what's happening. And a very old nurse, she must have been 50.
That time you were 20, okay, yeah. That's funny.
She said to me, Joyce, if you're going to work in intensive care, you're going to see unusual things around death. You just have to accept them and learn from them. And I spent my career asking or assigning myself any patient that might die. And the amazing things that I have seen, the people who have come back, the stories that I've heard, shaped my career, and I certainly am a believer.
When did you give your life to the Lord Jesus?
That October. I went to a friend's house, and she said, well, Joyce, have you ever prayed the prayer to commit yourself to Christ? And I said, no, how's it go? And she said, well, you just have to ask God, ask Jesus to be your Lord and Savior. So that night, I was driving home from Oklahoma, from Texas, and my car started to drive itself. As I was praying the prayer, I became so fixed on one star in the sky, I thought I better pull over. And when I tried to pull over, my car wouldn't slow down when I put the brakes on.
What do you mean drive itself? You didn't tell me that last
I
time.
didn't tell you that last night. My car was driving itself. I let go of the wheel, I took my foot off the gas, and I just fixed on this one star in the sky. And I started singing Angels We Have Heard on High. And then I wasn't singing in English anymore. And since I was Presbyterian, I didn't know what was happening.
Don't you love this?
But it certainly changed my life. And what I learned is that I cannot hide this light under a bushel basket. And now that I have let my RN license become inactive, I'm no longer afraid to stand up in public and tell this story, and someone will believe. So don't picture the gray-haired lady you're looking at now. Picture the 20-year-olds. That's who it was. And take Kathryn Kuhlman's story into your heart and know that miracles are real,
Yes.
that God is alive,
Yes.
that He's working in our lives,
Yes.
and be willing to accept the challenge that He offers to us.
Joyce, why did you call me through Red and Yellow? Why me? To tell me that.
I knew I had seen a video that you did about your first experience with Kathryn Kuhlman,
Yeah.
and with the lady with the what sounds like rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, I'll tell the story right now too. I love that.
And I thought, this is the man who needs to hear Kathryn Kuhlman's
You
story.
went to Robert's there the
I
day
did.
first.
I went to
Then
Robert's.
he said, you better go and tell Benny.
He did. He said, you better, Benny Hinn would love to hear this. And I said, how will I reach him? He said, the same way you reached me. And I just went on the website in the little section where you can put in a prayer. And I said, I was Kathryn Kuhlman's nurse the night she died. Would you like to hear her story?
And Leo